Today we're going to look at factorising quadratics. So to start with, we need to look at some number facts involving negative numbers. So just to recap, you should remember that when you do a plus times a plus, you get a plus. When you do a minus times a minus, you also get a positive answer. When you do a minus times a plus, you get a negative. And when you do a plus times a minus, get a negative. So I'm going to leave them up there and you might want to look back at them to help you with some of the questions in a moment. So we're going to start by looking at this first example here. So what I need to do is think of two numbers that add together to make 5 and multiply to make 6. Now sometimes these numbers are nice and easy and the answers will just pop into your head. Other times what I suggest you do is start to write down the numbers that times together to make the 6 and then look through and see which ones would add together to make 5. So what I mean is, how could we make 6? We could do 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. Which of those adds together to make 5? 2 and 3. So our answer is 2 and 3. Okay, so I've got another example here. I need two numbers that multiply to make 8 and add together to make 6. So I could have 1 and 8. I could have 2 and 4. They're all the factors of 8. Which two add together to make 6? Well, it'd be 2 and 4. Okay, nice and easy. So have a go. I've got some questions for you to do here. Okay, let's go through these then. Okay, I hope you got them right. Let's move on to our third example. So this time, our two numbers need to multiply to make minus 6. So I know in order to make a negative when we multiply, one of the numbers needs to be a negative. So when I look at my numbers that times together to make 6, I say I could have minus 1 and 6 or 1 and minus 6. I could have minus 2 and 3 or 2 and minus 3. So although they're the same numbers, either of the pair could be negative. So once you've got all your factors down, look at them and see which ones would add together to make 1 or positive 1. So it's going to be one of these two. Check your signs. Minus 2 add 3 would give you positive 1. So my answers are minus 2 and 3. So it's the same concept as the first set, but this time you've got a negative number in there. So have a go at the next few questions and then we'll go through them. Okay, hopefully you got all those correct. Let's have a look at our next example. Example 4. So this time I need two numbers that multiply to make positive 6 and add together to make minus 5. So this says to me that I need to have two negative numbers so that when I multiply them, I'll get a positive, and when I add them, the answer will remain negative. Okay, so let's write down the factors of 6. So I could have -1 and -6, and I could have -2 and -3. Which ones would add together to make -5? Be -2 and 3. Okay, so I've got some questions for you to have a go at. Press pause, have a go, and then I'll go through them. Okay, hopefully you got all those correct. So you just need to think about your signs carefully, double check when you add them together you get the correct number. So I've got some mixed questions for you to try here. Press pause, have a go, and then we'll go through them. Okay, there you go. So make sure you're comfortable with this skill, because if you can do this, you're going to be able to factorise quadratics really, really easily. Okay, so now we can look at how we factorise a quadratic. So we know from our previous skill, when we expand a quadratic, it looks like this. And when you expand it, you draw your grid, and what you would get is x squared add 6x add 8. So this would be expanding and going from an expression that looks like that back to 2 brackets back to back is factorising. Okay, so we're going to look at example 1 here. So factorising this quadratic, x squared add 7x add 12. Okay, so this is how we do it. We need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to make the back number and add together to make the middle. So I'm going to teach you the diamond method. Now, some of you might think you don't need to draw this. I highly suggest you do. You get used to doing this, especially if you are on higher, because this will massively help you when we move on to the harder topics. So we put the number we want them to multiply together to make up the top, and we want them to add together to make 7. So the next thing you need to think about is what signs will you need. So if they're tied in together to make a positive number, and adding together to make a positive, then they're both going to be positive numbers. So let's write out our factors. So to make 12, I could have 1 and 12, I could have 2 and 6, I could have 3 and 4. So they're all the factors of 12. Which ones would add together to make 7? That would be 3 and 4. So we know it's got to go back to 2 brackets back to back. So we put our x at the front. Always check it is an x, they might change the letters up a little bit, and then we put 1 in 1 bracket and 1 in the other. It does not matter which way round you write them, so x plus 4, x plus 3 would still be correct. However, if you do have any negatives, you need to make sure the negative is with the correct number. Okay, let's write down a little how-to there. So the first thing we did was draw our diamond. Okay, so you need two numbers that multiply together. The back number, so they multiply to make the back number or the integer, and add together to make the middle. Okay, so think about your signs first. So think about what signs you need, and then write out the factors. And then pick your pair. Okay, once you've done that, put 1 in one bracket, or sorry, let's draw our brackets first. Right brackets with, I'll put x at front, and then put one number in one bracket and the other number in the other bracket. Okay, so we draw a diamond. We need two numbers that times together to make 12 and add together to make 7. Think about what signs you need, so they both need to be positive. We wrote out our factors. We picked our pair that times together to make 12 and added together to make 7. Write out your brackets with the x at the front or whichever letter it is. Put one of the numbers in one bracket, one in the other, and you're factorised. If you want to double check it, you could draw out a grid, multiply them through, and when you do that, you should get back to your question. Okay, so I've got 4 questions for you to do now. Press pause, have a go, and then we'll move on. Okay, hope you got those correctly. So here's our next example. So let's have a little look. Let's draw our diamond. Okay, we want two numbers that times together to make -10, two numbers that add together to make -3. So let's think about, are we going to need one negative, two negatives? So if I need it to times together to make -10, then one of them will have to be negative. So let's start by writing the factors of -10. So I've got, I could have -1 and 10. I could have 1 and -10. I could have -2 and 5, or 2 and -5. So they're all the factors of -10. Which ones would add together to make -3? It's these two. Lovely. So pop one in one bracket, one in the other. So this is +2 and this is -5. Okay, now if you're not sure in the exam, if you want to double check, draw your grid, multiply it out, and you should get this as your answer. So you have got ways to double check there. Okay, so what I want you to do now is press pause, and you've got 6 questions to do. Okay, hopefully you got those correct. Okay, last example this time. These are just practicing different skills with the negatives. So I need two numbers that times together to make plus 10 and add together to make minus 7. Okay, so to make a positive when you multiply and a negative when you add, it's looking like both signs are going to have to be negative. So I could have minus 1 and minus 10, minus 2 and minus 5. That's all my factors are 10. Which ones would add together to make minus 7? Got these two here. So I pop minus 2 in one bracket and minus 5 in the other. Okay, so I've got 6 more questions for you to do. Press pause, have a go, and then we'll go through them. Okay, so what I need you to do now is complete your exit ticket and send it off to your class teacher.